Hey everybody, John Skiba here from the Consumer Warrior YouTube channel, and in this video we're going to get all political. I'm recording this at the end of October of 2022, and I want to talk about a proposition that's on the Arizona ballot this November that's going to impact pretty much every single person in Arizona. I'm talking about Proposition 209. But if this is your first time here to my YouTube channel, please click subscribe. Check on that little bell, that way you'll be notified each and every week when I put out new videos that'll help you deal with serious debt problems. Just as far as a background and I guess disclaimer, I am a bankruptcy attorney in the state of Arizona. I also represent people who are being sued by creditors. I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and so I feel like I've got a little bit of experience and maybe insight into the whole creditor, debtor, debt collection system and process and how all that works. So we're going to talk about Proposition 209. This is a proposition that's on the ballot in Arizona for this November of 2022, and it deals specifically with exemptions. Now, exemptions are these laws that every state has that really protect your stuff. Whether you're going through bankruptcy, whether you have creditors who have judgments against you, or just trying to do collections against you, there are these exemptions that the law basically says, look, there's a certain standard of living, there are certain things that people need, and we're not going to let creditors take those. And there's usually dollar amounts or values assigned to them, and they protect a certain amount of equity in a home, or equity in a car, or value in personal property type belongings. So what Proposition 209 does is it increases the amount of property that people can keep who are in debt, or that at least that it's protected from their creditors, because truthfully it applies to everybody, these exemptions, whether you're in debt or whether you're not in debt. It just protects a certain amount of equity or value in the property you do have. And then it also adjusts the amount of garnishment that can happen if someone were to get a judgment against you. It reduces the percentage of your paycheck that they can take, and it also puts a cap on interest rates that medical providers can charge you if you have medical debt. So I want to go through each of these and talk about why I'm in support of Proposition 209 and why I think it's a good thing for all people in Arizona. So first, let's talk about what the proposition actually does. The first thing, and one of the biggest things it does, is it increases the amount of equity you can have in your home based upon the homestead exemption. So currently in Arizona right now, up to $250,000 of equity is protected in your home from creditors. And if you were to file for bankruptcy, as long as you have less than $250,000 of equity in your home, you can keep your home. Now, $250,000, it's better than what it was. In 2021, it was $150,000 of equity. And just to kind of give you a comparison of like states that are near us, like Nevada, their homestead exemption protects up to $605,000 of equity. And if you go just over to Texas, Texas has an unlimited homestead. It doesn't matter how much equity you have in your home, you can keep it. Essentially, they're saying, look, this is your house, and we're not going to let creditors come in and take your home from you because you fall in hard times. Now, it's important to note when we talk about creditors, we're not talking about like the mortgage. If you have a mortgage on the house and you don't pay it, whether you're in Texas, Nevada, Arizona, wherever, they're going to let them foreclose. We're talking about like a credit card or medical bills, things like that. They're not going to let them take that equity out of your home by putting a lien on it with some type of judgment. And likewise in bankruptcy, like I said, in Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you can lose assets. The court can seize it, sell it, give the money to the creditors. However, in Arizona, as long as you have less than $250,000 of equity, then the home is protected. So what Proposition 209 does is it says, look, let's raise the amount of equity you can have in your home and be a little more similar to states like Nevada or even Texas, like I said, that allows unlimited homestead. So it would raise the homestead exemption from $250,000 of equity up to $400,000 of equity. Now, this is a big deal, particularly for Arizona. If you watch, these swings in the housing market, Arizona seems to be, for whatever reason, uniquely impacted by these large swings. We know this back from 2008 when there was the housing crisis and the build up to it. And then we've just seen it recently in 2022 and 2021 where there was just this sharp spike in house values, but now we're also seeing it go down. And so it can be a situation where someone could buy a home and then literally a year or two later, the value has gone up dramatically, which is a positive thing, but it also puts them in a precarious situation if there's a job loss or medical issue where all of a sudden there's all this debt and now they have all this equity and they're at risk of losing their home as well. So I welcome this. I think that anybody that has a home in Arizona would welcome this, that their home, their homestead, the castle, however you want to think of it, is protected up to $400,000 of equity. It's important to know, we're not talking total value, we're talking equity. We're talking value minus liens, mortgages, all that kind of stuff. That amount is protected. And again, that's not even putting us anywhere near Texas, which is unlimited. Your home can have unlimited amount of equity in it, can have millions of dollars of equity and it's protected. And Nevada, which is $605,000. So we're not even to where those states are. And if you compare what we were in 2021 at $150,000 of equity, it's kind of a joke that we had that. It's nice that it's $250 now, and I think it would benefit all homeowners in Arizona if we could bump that up to $400,000. Protect the home, protect the four walls, as Dave Ramsey calls it, so that people don't have to worry about their home and a place to live if they run into difficult times in other areas, credit cards, medical bills, that kind of thing. All right, the next exemption that it increases relates to household goods and furnishings. Right now, Arizona has $6,000 of value of all of your homestead appliances, furniture, all of that is protected from your creditors. Prop 209 proposes to increase that to $15,000 of value. Now, this is another area where it seems like Arizona's exemptions are kind of stuck in the past a bit, particularly now with inflation and where it is. The cost and the value of everything is dramatically higher than what it was when these laws were first put into play. This exemption, it should be known, is also double for married people. So if you're married right now, you can protect up to $12,000, $6,000 each. If this law goes into effect, it'll be $15,000 or $30,000 each. I can tell you truthfully, even in a bankruptcy context, I'm not seeing people go after, or, bankruptcy trustees go after personal property type assets, but it just will give an added level of protection of the things that are just in your home. We're talking appliances, fridges, couches, that kind of stuff. They're not going to be able to go after that. Now, the next one is a pretty big one. This one relates to cars. It's a vehicle exemption. Currently, the law in Arizona is that $6,000 of equity in a vehicle is protected. And again, for married couples, it's $6,000 each. So there could be two vehicles with up to $6,000 of equity is protected from creditors. And again, this is not like the lender on the vehicle. If you're not paying your car payment, they can still repossess it. But what this is, and particularly we see this in bankruptcy, where if someone files for bankruptcy and they have more than $6,000 of equity in their vehicle, the bankruptcy trustee can sell it, give the $6,000 to the bankruptcy debtor, and then give the rest of the money to their creditors. And what Proposition 209 does is it proposes to increase that. It more than doubles. It goes from $6,000 up to $15,000 of equity in a vehicle. And again, for married couples, that's double, so $15,000 each. And you can stack it, so you could put $30,000 on one vehicle. And again, this is equity. We're talking about not just total value. This also makes sense, particularly if you bought in a car anytime in the last 2 years. You know that it's just nuts. The values and the prices of cars has gone up dramatically. This really is just a measure to keep pace with the increase in value and debt and everything else that goes along with vehicles. One other nice thing right now, the law is if you have a disability and you have one of the handicap plates or the placard, right now the law is you can protect up to $12,000 in equity. This law proposes to jump that up to $25,000 in equity. And this just really recognizes that with vehicles like that, sometimes there are modifications that need to be made that make the vehicle more expensive and accordingly more valuable. So the vehicle exemption is a big one. The next one is a huge thing in my mind, and this is the amount of money in a checking account or a savings account. Currently, Arizona's exemption of money in an account is a minuscule $300. This comes into play in a couple of situations. If there's a medical bill or a credit card and they get a judgment against you, they could come in and try to do a bank levy and take the money that's in your account. Right now in Arizona, if they do that, if you have more than anything over $300, they can leave you a $300 total in your account. Proposition 209 proposes to increase that to $5,000 would be protected. This will play a huge role in Chapter 7 bankruptcy situation, because right now, because of this law, which is totally unique to Arizona, if a person, when they file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, on the day that they filed, they have to have no more than $300 for an individual or $600 for a couple. That's total. And if you have a family, it doesn't matter how big it is, they're going into this bankruptcy with a total of $300 to $600 to their name. It doesn't make sense. It puts families in a very difficult situation as far as being able to try even just to cover basic expenses. I mean, the power bill in most people's homes during the summer in Arizona is $300 to $400. To say that they can only have $300 in there on that day of filing doesn't make a lot of sense. This allows people to have more of a safety net, and then they're not having to rely on outside sources, whether they be governmental, family, whatever it is. It allows them to have a little bit more of their money there that's protected and not be able to take from these various creditors. Now, one of the next areas, which is a big one, relates to wage garnishment. Currently, if a creditor gets a judgment against you and they go to your employer, they can garnish your wages and they can take a full quarter, a full 25% of your pay will be garnished, each paycheck. and given to your creditors. You know, I read what Dave Ramsey said, cited a study once that said that 75% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And so if you're taking out a full quarter of someone's paycheck, what it does often is usually pushes them into bankruptcy. One thing that was kind of interesting, I was at a creditors symposium for some continuing education, and I heard one of the creditors attorneys get up there and try to argue the reason why Prop 209 should fail, why people should vote against it, is because we want to help all the bankruptcy attorneys out. Because he says, you know, if you don't allow wage garnishment, it's going to make people not want to file for bankruptcy. And I thought, well, I appreciate you looking out for guys like me, bankruptcy attorneys, but that seems kind of like a perverse incentive of not voting for this because you want more people to go file for bankruptcy and help out the bankruptcy lawyers. Not much of a selling point there to anyone except maybe my own family who benefits from me working in the bankruptcy industry. So what the Prop 209 would do, it would reduce the garnishment from 25% to 10%. So, and to me, this is again a kind of a good middle ground. The creditor is still able to get some money. They can get 10% of the paycheck. So if you're getting $1,000 every 2 weeks, $100 is going to go to your creditors. Again, you compare this to states like Texas. Surprisingly to almost everyone, Texas does not allow any garnishment at all. No wage garnishment. They can't garnish your wages in the state of Texas. In Arizona, they can take a full 25% of your pay. So this kind of meets a middle ground and makes it more, I think, reasonable as far as what's allowed to be taken. And then one of the bigger things as well is when it comes to medical debt, it reduces the cap. As far as right now, when it comes to medical bills, medical providers can charge up to 10% interest. It reduces that down to 3%, which again is an acknowledgement, particularly with medical debt. This is something that people are generally not planning on. It's not usually their fault. You know, something has happened to them where there's just overwhelming debt related to a medical issue. Medical debt is always treated differently. It's treated differently when it comes to like credit reporting rules, collections in general. I think this just brings that into line with it. So I've read here, I've got what's on my ballot. I've read kind of the pros and the cons against Prop 209. And I can tell you the people who are against this, truthfully, it's a lot of collection attorneys and people who work in the collection industry who benefit directly from being able to continue to do this. Here's my problem with it as well, is that most of the people doing things like wage garnishment or leaning people's homes or going after different assets, most of them are what we call junk debt buyers. They're these big national companies that go to credit card companies, medical providers, landlords who have judgments, and they buy debt at a discounted rate, usually pennies on the dollar. The FTC did a study, said the average debt buyer pays 4 cents on the dollar for debt. They buy this debt at a discount, they sue people, they get judgments against them, and then they garnish their wages. I've always felt like they're kind of playing the system here. They're investing in misery. They're investing in people's hardships. The people are struggling with debt. They go in, buy it at a discount, and then collect, though, 100 cents on the dollar. Not only that, they get these judgments, and they have pushed through various laws through Arizona's legislatures where now civil judgments are good for 10 years, and then they can be renewed every 10 years. I have seen more times than I can tell you, a junk debt buyer goes out, gets a judgment for $1,500. They get an interest rate on that at 30%, and it just sits there and racks up interest for a decade. They renew it, they go in, they hit someone with a wage garnishment 10, 12, 15 years later, and all of a sudden this $1,500 judgment that they got is now $15,000, and they garnish people's pay. And not only that, they're garnishing it at a rate where it's not even covering the interest charges. And so it just becomes this indefinite thing, and it does force people into bankruptcy. So that's the bulk of what it is. Some of these arguments against are like, well, it's going to hurt local collectors or people who are loaning money to people. 99% of collection actions in Arizona courts are these large junk debt buyers that are filing these things in huge volume. We're talking huge volume. Some of these debt buyers file 500,000 plus lawsuits a year nationwide. So they file these things in huge volume, do their wage garnishment, do their bank levy. This evens the playing field a bit, and it also allows some of these companies that have just really clogged the courts with all of these collection actions to basically have to take a step back and realize, look, in Arizona, there are certain things that we prioritize over some of these aggressive debt collectors who are just trying to make a quick buck off of people who are going through hard times. These exemptions will protect that, and they'll also allow people who truly need bankruptcy protection to go into bankruptcy, get the debt relief they need, but still not be completely destitute on the backside where they're facing, another bankruptcy 8 years from now because they're in a situation where they just can't ever seem to get the traction they need. So that's my opinion. Obviously, I'm hearing this from a bankruptcy attorney, but I will be voting for Prop 209 because I think it will benefit not only people that are dealing with debt problems, like I said, the fact that the homestead exemption goes up, it protects anybody. And my last thing I'll leave you with is I can tell you this. Having done this for roughly 20 years, I can tell you that I've met with tens of thousands of families. I have filed bankruptcy for people who will make more money than I'll ever dream of making in my lifetime. Debt issues can happen to anyone. Literally to anyone. People that, had 800 credit scores and more money in the bank than they know what to do with. Medical issues can happen. Downturns in the economy can happen. And so I don't think it's one of these things where you can say, oh, I'll never go there. To me, it's one of these things that's there, but for the grace of God, go I kind of thing. That I think that these exemption laws do strike a good balance between meeting the needs of the debt collectors and collection creditors as far as getting them payment, but at the same point, not leaving people completely destitute. And again, all we have to do is look to other states like Nevada and Texas and realize this is how other states are treating it, and it's a good way for Arizona to go as well. So I hope that that is helpful for those of you who are doing your research into Prop 209. Again, I think it's a good proposition, and I would encourage you to vote for it. Again, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go ahead and do it. There's a lot of other videos here that deal with debt collection, bankruptcy, all those kinds of things. And if you need legal help and you're in the state of Arizona, my information is below. Thanks for watching today.